This video will show you how to replace the front lower control arm on a Chrysler 300. This is part of the front steering and suspension located behind the front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Since this vehicle is an all-wheel drive, we have to dislodge our power steering rack. So we're inside of the passenger compartment. We're going to tie off our steering wheel so it cannot spin once we dislodge our steering shaft from under the vehicle. I'm using a strap here, holding the steering wheel so it will not spin. Now to remove the driver's side front wheel, it's already up in the air. Let's remove all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts and remove that wheel. Now we're into the front of the vehicle and we can see our power steering gear, or you can call it a power steering rack. Now we will have to dislodge it from the subframe, but before doing that, we have to focus in this area. Now we can see where our steering shaft connects to the power steering gear. Use a 13mm to remove the pinch bolt. After that, we're going to carefully tap this upward, removing it from the power steering rack shaft. Before removing this bolt, you need to be sure that you tied off the steering wheel in the passenger compartment so you do not set off one of your airbags. A thorough inspection of all hardware as we continue on. Replace as necessary. Now we'll carefully tap on the steering shaft. For this, I'm just going to be using a bar and a hammer. I'm going to tap this up. Once it's separated, we'll make sure the joint up along the top area there is not seized in any way. Now we can take hold of that shaft. As you can tell, it pivots as it should. If it was stiff, the joint might be seized and you'd want to service that. This looks good, let's continue on. Now we can move along to our 18mm headed mounting bolts. I have support under here, let's remove those bolts. For the upper mounting bolts, you're going to find that you have an 18mm mounting nut on the far side or the forward side here. So I'm just going to hold that. Now that we have these bolts out, we can start lowering the power steering rack. Keep in mind there are power steering lines on the forward side of this, right along this area. We don't want to cause any damage. Let's remove our 32mm axle nut. We'll use some penetrant in the center area here, a hammer and punch directly in the center of the axle shaft so we can break this free. Now, as you can tell, I do have movement from this. Let's continue on to removing our lower ball joint nut. We're looking down underneath our front brake rotor. This is where we can see our steering knuckle, and right at the very bottom, we have our ball joint stud with a 24mm ball joint mounting nut. Let's go ahead and remove that nut, and we're going to start carefully trying to separate our ball joint from the steering knuckle. I like to start this back on a couple threads. We'll be using some penetrant in this area. We'll let it sit and continue on. Now that we have that on there, we're going to start separating this. If you have a ball joint separator tool, we're going to use that. I'm going to carefully slide this into place. I'll lightly tap on it with a hammer. I don't want to cause any damage here. Now the upper portion of this is pressing up against the knuckle. The lower portion is up against the ball joint mounting nut and stud. Now I'm going to apply pressure, forcing these two together and driving that ball joint up and away. Now you may have to lightly tap on the steering knuckle, causing vibration to help break it free. Now we can lift up on this. I'm going to leave it in place temporarily and we'll continue on. Now as you make your way up the lower control arm, we can see the area where the lower fork on our front strut connects to the control arm. We have to dislodge this bolt. You have a 21mm nut on the rearward side, and the bolt head is also a 21mm. I'm going to hold the bolt head. I'm using a wrench here. We'll remove that mounting nut. After a quick inspection of that, we'll start it back on a couple threads here. We can use that nut to lightly tap the bolt out of place. Once you do have movement, remove the nut and remove the mounting bolt. A thorough inspection of both pieces of hardware and we can set this aside. All the way on the inboard side of the control arm where it connects to the subframe, we have two mounting bolts. We'll start with the rearward mounting bolt. This bolt is an 18mm headed bolt that comes through from the rear all the way through the subframe and the control arm to the far side. On the other side there you have a 21mm mounting nut, so I'll just be using a wrench for that. Now we can take hold of that bolt, slide it out of there. That bolt looks good, set it aside. Now that we have that one out of place, let's make our way to the forward hardware. Looking all the way up here, we can see where the control arm connects to our subframe. Once again, we're using an 18mm and a 21 in the opposite orientation. The 18mm head is along the front. That bolt looks good as well. We're making our way towards our ball joint mounting nut. We can fully remove that now. Continuing on, we're going to carefully start separating the ball joint from the knuckle. You can pry it apart if necessary. We'll just pivot that knuckle just far enough that we can get the ball joint stud out of place. Prior to installation of any brand new part, of course we need to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting areas. We'll start at the knuckle and make our way inboard. As for cleaning this down, you can use a clean rag. We're going to give this a wipe. Make sure nothing's rotted, weak, or damaged in any way. You can use some sandpaper if necessary. Now we're looking along the bottom of the front strut here. We have our forked area. Moving along, we're at the subframe mounting points. We'll just go ahead and make our way inside this area. We're being careful for any sharp edges. Now it's time for installation of the brand new front lower control arm. When we bring this into position, we're going up and over our sway bar, of course. We're bringing the inboard side towards our subframe. We'll flex things as necessary, align them. Once we get it in the position where we can install our bolts, we'll do that as well. Let's make sure this is properly aligned. We'll make any adjustments as necessary to get this in place. You may need to pry either out or in on the forward side to get this rearward side aligned. We'll start on our mounting nut. Now let's do the same for the forward mounting bolt. You can make any adjustments as necessary here. Looks like ours is pretty much already aligned. We have our mounting hardware. Now we have both pieces of hardware that are holding the control arm to the subframe in place. We are not tightening anything yet. Let's continue on to the outer ball joint next. All the way out here, we want to make sure that we have our ball joint stud pressed in the far outward position. We're going to carefully start pressing our knuckle outward. We'll swing this up, bring the ball joint down and through its mounting port on the knuckle itself. We have our ball joint nut. Now, if you were looking at this nut, you'll see that it is a locking nut. You can see that it does have these notches on one side. The other side of the nut does not. We want to have the side of the nut with the notches facing down. We'll leave this loose as well and make our way up to the next mounting point here. Now, for this area here, you may need to raise or lower your suspension to get everything aligned. We'll make our adjustments as necessary, slide the bolt through from the front towards the rear. We have our mounting nut. Go ahead and start that on. To tighten the control arm hardware, we need to make sure that we have the suspension in the original ride height position. For this, I'm going to continue applying pressure here, bringing it into the proper position prior to tightening any other hardware. Now that we have full upward pressure on that lower control arm, we're going to start by tightening our lower control arm to subframe mounting hardware first. For each of these control arm bolts, we'll be tightening these and torquing them to 130 foot-pounds. Let's get that rearward mounting bolt next. Now we can focus on reinstalling the power steering rack or gear. Obviously, we want to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting points on that subframe. So I'm just going to give them a quick wipe here. We want to make sure nothing's rotted, weak, or damaged. There's two, the other one's over on the far side. Let's get this power steering rack in place. We're going to bring it up. We'll start in our lower hardware and of course the upper hardware as well. After that, we can tighten it down. The upper mounting hardware, we have our mounting nut on the forward side. So we'll slide this through and start on that nut. All right, let's snug them up. We'll hold that mounting nut on the forward side there. They're all snug. We're torquing them to 75 foot-pounds. Now we can flex the shield down. We're protecting our mounting bolt and our power steering rack bellow boot. We'll continue on to the power steering shaft. Now as for that steering shaft, let's make sure that we wipe this down and give it a thorough inspection. That looks good. We'll have a peek at that steering rack. Clean down that shaft. This is looking good as well. For good measure, we'll just use a tiny bit of anti-seize on this. Don't need very much. We'll compress the shaft, slide it into place. Now let's continue on to our pinch bolt. I'm using blue thread locker. We'll slide this through, start it in, snug it up. The torque will be 32 foot-pounds on this. Double check to make sure that's properly secured. You do not want this coming loose while you're driving down the road. Let's tighten the clevis bolt, holding the lower shock fork to our control arm. Snug it up and torque that to 128 foot-pounds. Let's snug our ball joint nut and torque it to 90 foot-pounds. Now that we have everything here torqued, we can release pressure from underneath our suspension. Let's have a look at the center of our wheel. We're going to remove our center cap here. From the inboard side, just go ahead and gently push it through. Now, as you can see, we have not installed our axle nut yet. Let's install our wheel with that center cover out of the way. We'll have everything in place here and we can start on the mounting nut once this is down on the ground. That way there we can torque it as necessary. Once you have all 5 of those lug nuts started on, go ahead and lightly bottom them out. Now let's get the wheel closer to the ground so we can torque our lug nuts, then we'll continue on to our axle nut directly in the center area here. Now I have my wheel back on the ground. Let's torque our lug nuts in a crisscross manner to 140 foot-pounds. After torquing each one of the lug nuts, it's time for our axle nut. During the installation of the axle nut, you never want to use an impact tool, which could potentially cause damage to the bearing if you over torque. We'll start this on by hand. We'll use a hand ratchet to snug it up. Once it's snug, we'll be torquing that to 157 foot-pounds. Let's make sure we install our center cap. Tap it into position, double check to make sure it's secured in place. In the passenger compartment, we'll remove the strap, preventing the steering wheel from spinning. Okay friend, we finished our installation. The next thing you have to do is pump up your brake pedal. Confirm it feels firm. After that, take your vehicle for a road test to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.